reflective pool. I mean, you're really putting a reflective pool on top of a buried tank. And can you cite another example in any other city where that's ever
Yeah,
been
there's
the
actually
case?
there's lots of reservoirs that have reflecting pools on top of. We have people here that have actually designed it. I can't tell you where those are at. I do know that there are some in California. I just don't know the exact location.
And last time around, when you were going to be demolishing the reservoirs over at Mount Tabor, we had been told all along that the gatehouse at Reservoir 5 would be just fine until we came to a very small meeting with MWH Global then, and Commissioner Salzman was there. There were just a few of us in the audience, and it was an inexperienced engineer from MWH that was giving the presentation. And we asked him directly, so what about that gatehouse? Your plans show that it's going to be gone. And he had to admit that the gatehouse would be extremely damaged, wouldn't be there any longer. But that wasn't the story we'd been told all along.
And I don't know that that's a true statement. I don't know anything about Gatehouse 5.
Well, that's all right. But we're talking about here now. You're working in very small quarters. And I notice you're very careful in the language and the wording that you're putting out there. So is the expectation with the design that's out there now that you're going to be damaging the entire most of the historical features, the gatehouse at the reservoir where you're demolishing it and building an underground tank?
Well, first of all, you asked a bunch of questions.
I know.
So it is our intent to maintain and protect as much as practical all of the historical features. Features will be affected. It's not our intent to take out all of them. I know the gatehouses are not intended to go anywhere. We're not intending to do anything to the dams. There are things, though, that will be totally affected, and that is the reservoirs themselves, the basins. The parapet walls, the fences, yes, those are going to have to come out, and then those can be inventoried and then come back, or whatever. But no, I would not say every feature is going to be demolished and gone.
50% or more or less?
I can't tell you. I don't know. We honestly do not have a design.
You don't have any standards that you're aiming for? You haven't faced any studies so far on what you expect to have happen? You have no idea of what you expect to have happen to make the modifications that are already underway come to full fruition?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay, so what can you let us in on what you do know about what the changes
I can't tell you a percentage or exactly what's going to be affected because we don't know. We have not designed that yet.
But you're not doing any study on the ground, the landslide?
No, we're doing a lot of study on the ground. You didn't ask that question.
Okay, so what are you learning for the study on the ground that will inform what will happen to the reservoirs?
We have extensive geotech drilling that is being done, and that geotech drilling will tell us where the landslide's at, what its movement would be, and we're basing our design based on that.
Yes, can you name the contractor who's doing the geotech drilling and the contractor who will be serving as your city's advisor in the citizens committees over what goes on top? So two contractors.
So Cornforth is our geotech. Can you spell that? Corn, C-O-R-N, Forth, F-O-R-T-H. And I don't know if they've got the rest of their name or not. It's Cornforth is the geotechs, and they're a local firm. The consultant that is doing the design of what goes on top is AECOM. It's the initials, AECOM, A-E-C-O-M. And then JLA was the other piece of your question. JLA Associates is the public outreach group. So we started design in May of 2013, a month and a half ago. Land use we expect to be submitting next summer, June, May, that time frame of 2014.
To the landmarks commission or to
the BDS and landmarks. That's the land. That will be the land use application that goes to both BDS and landmarks. March of 2016, we have to submit the final plans to the state health department for the, and July of 2016, construction is supposed to start. The Reservoir 3 is supposed to be online by the end of 2019, and Reservoir 4 is supposed to be disconnected by the end of 2020.
How will all this be paid for, including what goes on top and what the citizens do?
By water funds.
So what goes on top will be water funds?
I'm sorry?
What goes on top will be by ratepayers as well?
That was my understanding.
And who did you get that understanding from, that the ratepayers are going to pay what goes
it's all part of the project, and the project is funded by ratepayers, by water fund. It's not paid by anybody else.
So with the Water Bureau being so in debt the way it already is, what are they going to do in order to come up with the money first before they pass the bill on to ratepayers?
Yeah, I can't answer that. I don't have that information.
Is there a policy set for how they're going to fund it?
I don't have that information.
Isn't
Could you
it all
direct
through
us-
bonds? Isn't it all through bonds? That's how you fund projects.
It's mostly,
through
yeah.
bonds.
So the bond measure would be for what the citizens.
I don't know if it's a bond measure or not. The water is funded typically by bonds, whether the bond measures have already occurred or not, and then eventually ratepayers will pay that.
So the question has come up, Tim, that ratepayers can be paying for the process of converting the reservoirs and also what goes on top. So with the Water Bureau being as in debt as it already is, and we also know it's going to go further in debt to do the LT2 compliance that you decided you're moving forward on, the question becomes, how are you guys going to finance it before the debt gets passed on to the ratepayers?
We've been financing this through our bonds. Am I correct?
I didn't have anything else to add.
Yeah, we're financing this through the bonds that we apply for, and water rates pay for the payments on those bonds.
Are those bonds that you've already applied for and received, or
Some
are
of
those?
yes, we have received some bonds to pay for these projects. We have to, and I'm not the finance director, and I'm sorry I can't answer your question in detail. But yes, we have applied.
So who would be the right person for us to get an answer in detail to the very essential question of how this is all going to be paid for?
Who's the financial director?
Cecilia, and her last name is Hyung, but you should speak with David Shaft at Water Bureau. Yeah.
We would love to, and it's amazing to me that this whole public process happens without the essential answer to how it's all going to be paid for being part of the dialogue.
It is being paid for through bonds. They've already passed. They just brought the $252 million bond, so that is financing projects through the next year, and then next year they will bring another big bond.
Actually, they're funded for a period of time.
Right,
I don't know
right.
what that period of time is. But, yeah.
They mentioned over there that part of the reason for this was because a big earthquake was expected, and that the seismic upgrading needed to be done. Now, my understanding is that there's been at least 10 fairly substantial earthquakes in this region. That reservoir has already survived with flying colors.
Whereas a statement.
Okay.
So what we said is that over the last 10,000 years, there have been 60 Cascadia subduction zone earthquakes that have been recorded and documented by Dagami. The last one was in 1700. Our reservoirs have never been through a large earthquake of a Cascadia subduction zone magnitude. We haven't had one since 1700.
Have our bridges been through one?
No.
The pipes underground, we know that. The pipes underground.
Infrastructure in the city of Portland?
Wait a second.
So there was a second part to that question, and that was the fact that the contractor who's going to be building this, Montgomery Watson Harza, they've already built underground storage facilities in Seattle that are already failing.
Montgomery Watson Harza is not the designer for the Washington Park project. Montgomery Watson Harza designed the Kelly Butte project, not the Washington Park
Right,
project.
but they are designing several of the other underground wells in here. So how do we know that those are going to survive an earthquake when this is a facility that has survived about 10 decent-sized earthquakes, whereas Montgomery Watson Harza's buried tanks can't even survive construction?
I'm not going to comment on Seattle's construction. They have to meet the current building code.
We know from public records requests over at, related to Mount Tabor reservoirs from the Dam 12 reports that those that said, that if there were a level 9 earthquake, there would be some minor leaking. Now, you may have gone back and changed those reports, but we have those public records. All the pipes are going to be the big problem. It's going to be distribution. Do you disagree that all the pipes are going to be a big problem in a major earthquake?
I don't disagree that the pipes will be an issue in the earthquake. I don't know about the report that you're quoting for the Section 12 or the Chapter 12 permit with FERC. I don't know that answer. I can tell you that none of the open reservoirs have any structural steel that meets the current building code. None of them have been designed for earthquakes. They were all built in the late 1800s or the early 1900s, and that was not for an earthquake. That was for gravity loads.
Yes, and Montgomery Watson Harza Global's Pal Butte 1. I've read those documents too, and just they're new, 1980, and I've read all
those were
those
not
reports.
designed for
That's right.
earthquake loads either.
That's right, 1980.
Because our codes changed in the 1990s.
And I've also read their documents where it said we could have simply upgraded that reservoir for a very small cost compared to build. And then, well, here, answer this question, because this is the burning question. We were chastised by the Water Bureau when we suggested back in 2009 or 10 that you were going to build a blend center up on Pal Butte. We were told, oh no, that's not going to happen. So you want to tell us here today that there's no capability in this new tank that you're building to blend water from other sources?
Actually, there's not. I did not design any.
There are none.
There
Because
are none for the Pal Butte 2. We did not
Amanda
design
Fritz
anything.
is telling people that this reservoir is capable of blending water.
We did not design that in this project.
It was discussed but not designed.
No, it was not discussed. I'm the project manager for the Pal Butte Reservoir 2 project.
I know.
I did not design it. We deliberately chose not to include that in the project.
Are you satisfied?
But weren't those tanks purchased back in 2009?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said, weren't those tanks for Pal Butte purchased on an emergency measure back in 2009? Didn't Randy Leonard buy those big old tanks?
What do you mean award a contract? Is that what you're saying? Award a contract under emergency ordinance?
And that he was able to buy these tanks, and these tanks had mixing.
Randy Leonard did not buy the reservoirs
Why not
in 2009. He may have passed an emergency ordinance. I don't remember, but he may have passed an emergency ordinance. I know that all the reservoirs since Pal Butte have not been emergency ordinances. They've all been on the regular agenda so that people can discuss them.
Yeah, no, this was an emergency, and it was to buy tanks. And from what I understood, those tanks had the ability to create mix. So you don't have tanks up there that mix.
We have tanks that blend water from the groundwater system. That already happens to all of the reservoir at Pal Butte 1, and Pal Butte 2 will be able to do that. We are not being able to blend or mix water from anybody else's water source.
Such as the Willamette, is that what you're saying, or the Columbia?
Or anything besides groundwater. That's all we've designed it for.
And if I did a public records request asking that, that's what I would
That's
say.
what you would find, yes.
Thank you.
Don't you have an emergency connection to Clackamas River Water District right now?
Not that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of
That
it.
contradicts what you people have said for almost a decade.
No, what I said is I am not aware of one. I don't know if there's one. There may be one. You can ask the public information request to find out. You will not find anything about that in my records because I don't know about it.
There's a document. There's a document that's been of concern to people that's generating all these questions and is causing a lot of suspicion in the community. It's the Regional Transmission and Storage Strategy document. And so we would like the city to go on record as either saying that document no longer applies, A, that doesn't apply, B, it currently still applies in the following ways, or C, it's been replaced by this other document that's steering our strategy.
And I'm not the person to answer
would-
any
who
of
would-
that.
who
You
would-
need to talk to David Schaff.
David Schaff
I
would
don't
be
know
the
anything
next.
about that report.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
This is, we want to answer questions. We do want to answer your questions, but you're asking questions of folks that are here tonight to talk about the Washington
Thank you.
Park Reservoir project. That's why we're here tonight. This is not this is not a public meeting about the reservoirs at Mount Tabor or about financing the programs and all.
Why
those
would
things.
financing
But
not
we-
be a part of this?
You know what? You raise good questions. We will answer your questions.
We just don't have it here.
We don't have the answer here. I'm not
Is
the
there someone
financial
you can
director.
call to get those answers? I mean, surely they know that you're having an
We
open
are
house.
more than happy to get you that information. Please, if you put your name on the contact sheet, we will send out information to all of you who want it.
But doesn't it seem strange that the city would bring consultants here to answer the concerns of the community and then not arm
They're
you
here
with
to
the
talk
answers
now.
to the
They're
questions that
not
people
here
might
to talk
have?
about the concerns of this community.
I thought that
What
that's
they're
what we
no,
said
they're
over
here
here.
to talk about the Washington Park Reservoir project, which is going to be designed, and what we want is the input of the citizens tonight, what we'd like you to do is to take a look at the boards to talk about this project, give your input that you have about maintaining the reservoirs, the historic appeal of the Washington Park reservoirs. That's what the conversation here tonight
But
is.
cost is a huge part of that
Yes,
discussion, and you
cost is
haven't
a-
supplied
co-
anybody
co-
at this meeting to talk to us
And
about
you know what?
it's going to cost and
And
how
I'm
it's going to
sorry-
be financed.
I'm
How could
sorry
you
if
drop
we-
the ball on the cost issue? It's the biggest issue there is, especially when you're
we've,
so
we've
far
been over
in
this
debt.
topic already.
No, but you're saying we're bringing you all the information. This is what the meeting's about. But I'm telling you, is if this is a public, open forum, that we also need to give you feedback. That one of the critical things that should happen at public forum is talking about how this debt is going to be financed and who's going to pay for it.
And you
Especially
know,
because it's going to be us.
And we've heard you, and we want to answer your questions, and that's why I'm saying, rather than have myself or one of the engineers or any of the folks here that are working on this project, we are more than happy to get an answer from our finance director who can lay this out in terms of how the funding is. Floyd knows this information. She's worked with she's sat on our budget hearings. She knows the finance director. She knows that the finance director can answer their questions. Tonight, again, we would like to hear your opinions and your views about the Washington Park Reservoir project. Well, you're not asking about the cost of the project.
I am
What you're
asking
asking
about the
about
cost of the project.
you're asking about how
funding.
it's funded and financed. And we're
all of
happy
that.
to tell you
Well,
about
what's the cost of the project then?
The
What do you-
budget.
We have budgeted, in 2009, when we identified the project, we budgeted $167 million.
And does that include?
I'm sorry, that's incorrect. $67 million.
So does that include what will happen on top of
Yes.
the public? That includes the public process and the funding for whatever people come up with in the design during the public process?
Within reason.
That's the key.
Yeah,
That's the key
right.
right there.
Right.
That's the key for everybody in the neighborhood to understand. Because if the public processes that I've spent months sitting through in my life, the budget goes up so high and the city encourages it, so they know that it can never be funded. And our park at Mount Tabor has two public processes that have very expensive, over close to $1 million worth of public money into it that are sitting on the shelves unfunded and have been for a number of years.
And you
So
know,
we have
the
concerns
project-
about that. Our taxpayer dollars are going to be wasted
But
this way at Washington
let's
Park.
talk about those projects.
Yeah.
It was in 2004, we had a project called What Goes on Top of the Mount Tabor Reservoirs. The Water Bureau's plan was to put a tank in the footprint of those reservoirs and put a water feature on top.
But it wasn't needed at the time, right?
Well, no, it was needed. That was part of the city council made a unanimous decision. They made a unanimous vote to go ahead and do this project. The project got canceled because of an independent review panel finding that stated that the reservoir projects needed to be could be postponed.
The project also partly got
But-
canceled
but-
because there was a notice of intent to appeal the land use decision.
Well, it took the independent review panel made a recommendation to the city council, and the city council made a decision to cancel the project.
About a week after they've been put on notice that they were being
So that
sued
is
on
why
land use.
that is why that project, you know, if we're not going to build the project, that's why it's sitting on the shelf.
What about the yard?
What about the Mount Tabor Yard? $400,000 public process to build swanky architectural plans that sits on the shelf at the city, completely
We're not-
unfunded
but
since
we're not the- but
2008.
we're not the Parks Bureau, and I can't answer questions for the Parks Bureau. That was a Parks Bureau process.
But you told me today on the phone when I was talking to you, you were part of that entire process.
I told you I was at the meetings. I didn't tell you I was part of the process.
So,
Well, you were at the meetings, but you can't tell us what you learned at those meetings.
for Parks Bureau.
can't
You need
talk
to
for
ask the
Parks.
Parks. They're-
well, I can talk.
You
about
can't
that.
tell us what your understanding was of what they.
It
what
would be
conclusions they
It
reached.
would be inappropriate to comment on parks. All I can say is that we were there because we had a small piece of property. That was part of the discussion.
Well, regardless, the problem is that we've been through these processes before.
And we understand
And now,
that, and that's
and
what
then,
we're
and
doing.
then those processes cost so much money that they just go over here. We're not going to do anything about it. And,
But
that,
if-
and so
but
we have
if-
good reason to believe that this is going to be exactly the same way.
But if you have two public processes, one where people are coming up with ideas and solutions, and another community public effort to stop that project, then what happens?
There were no community efforts to stop the yard.
No, no.
The public canceled out the What Goes on Top project.
The public did not cancel out
The
the
city
yard
council,
project.
well, but like again, I cannot speak for the Parks Bureau on what happened to their
Right,
project.
but
He's not talking about that.
But we're saying that this is why we are
And
concerned.
I understand,
that
but you can be concerned about what happened with parks. But I'm telling you, as far as the Water Bureau's process related to what goes on top in 2004, that was a process that a number of people, citizens, spent time, weeks and months working on, only to have a decision made that the project was going to be canceled. So if we were not going to be putting reservoirs in the footprint of the Mount Tabor reservoirs, then why? There's no project. There's no reason to put anything in the reservoir.
So whatever the public comes up with this project is guaranteed that the Water Bureau
What they're doing today is the public is making recommendations on the park as they see it. This is a public park. It's a public park. Folks like water. The Water Bureau.
We're talking park now or water?
No,
I
we're
thought you didn't
talking
want to talk for parks.
No, I'm talking not about. I said it's a park, Washington Park. The Water Bureau owns and operates the reservoirs in the park. So what we're concerned about is putting water storage in the park so that we can meet the water demands of the folks on the west side of Portland and folks downtown. That's what this project is about.
So this will, and so the Water Bureau will guarantee that whatever the citizens come up with to do for the park and how it relates to the reservoirs, that they will build it.
I will say that the city council has that authority. You have to understand, the city council, your elected representatives, make the decisions related to the Water Bureau. The Water Bureau is only making recommendations. The city council has to make the decisions because there's a cost to you, the citizens, and the ratepayers about anything that folks want. In 2004, for example, the city of Portland, the city council was willing to spend $23 million just to put reflecting pools on top of the reservoirs at Mount Tabor. Those plans were rejected.
Because it wasn't needed. We didn't want you to waste that much money. It's the same story here.
You were going to put
Wasn't
reflecting
needed,
pools
so
on
we
top
don't-
of a $500 million
The Water Bureau-
burial.
You can
But
say-
now what we've got is we've got a federal mandate that says
No, you
Not
don't.
true.
No, you don't. You do not have a federal mandate. The federal government has said
They just stopped
that.
fighting for it.
I
They just
know.
stopped asking for it.
No.
Yep, you
No,
made
wait,
a
you're
decision.
talking about something else.
You
I'm
made a
talking
decision
about
to put a timeline in that's self-imposed and created by the Water Bureau.
Self-imposed. Yes.
it's not created by the Water Bureau. We've had this conversation today. What we had was the city of Portland negotiated with the EPA on a timetable.
It did
to
not
implement-
negotiate. It submitted a rushed
to
schedule that
implement-
benefited its contractors who give it campaign
I sat in
contributions.
meetings and heard Randy Leonard say we're going to fast track it. So,
Yeah.
so you can
But
tell
And I can
but
bring up
if
something
there
else.
is now the possibility that the EPA will overturn the LT2 rule, why would we spend all of this money? You're talking $23 million in 2004. This is over $300 million in 2013.
You're making an assumption
Why wouldn't we
that
try?
the EPA is going to
No,
do
I'm saying why, if there's a chance,
They have stated,
why
Lisa
would
Jackson has
$300
stated
million
in her letter the intention to review whether reservoirs
it's
need
a
to be
part of it.
buried.
$300 million is, if there's even a chance, and it's $300 million, why would we not avail ourselves of that chance? It's $300 million.
We have asked the Oregon Health Authority, and you all know this. We've asked the Oregon Health Authority twice to delay the project, to defer
go
the
for a
project.
third time.
You've asked David Leland twice. You haven't gone over his head. You haven't asked for the governor's help, even though the entire Oregon congressional delegation is supporting our position. And I would like to ask you about public safety, because you talked a minute ago about the urgency of doing seismic upgrades on Washington Park because you're worried about interruption to service if there's an earthquake. But David Schaff of the Water Bureau submitted in his request to David Leland to delay this project that rushing this project puts the public in danger of service interruptions because so many projects are overlapping at the same time.
You're referring to something I have not read that you're saying that David Schaff.
You haven't read the
I ha-
city's
I ha-
appeals to the
I-
Oregon Health Authority to delay this
I have
project?
not read. You said what David Schaff has said, and I'm saying no, I have
The
not.
city, the two requests that you referred to, those are the ones I'm referring to. in
and
that request.
They were
He
denied by
expressed-
denied by the OHA, and like I said, I don't have those documents in front of me to
Right,
take a
but
look
why are
at.
you telling people that there's a public health urgency to protect against an earthquake when you're not concerned about the public health urgency of delaying service because so many projects are rushed that like
Delaying service?
delaying service? Yeah. Well, I would suggest that you read David Schaaf's letter. He said that by not allowing the city to delay construction of these reservoirs until LT2 is overturned or reconsidered, that it risks delay in service that could put a huge public health risk on Portland because all of these projects are going on simultaneously because of the city's self-imposed rush schedule.
Can we have that edit? Yeah, thanks. So, city's self-imposed timeline for project. We want to know why the city won't voluntarily retract it and make a longer timeline that would be later than 2016.
And it would serve public health and safety by not causing dangerous interruptions in service.
And potentially save us hundreds of millions of dollars.
It's also interesting that you're holding this open house like smack dab in the middle of the summertime, when most families and people residential areas around Washington Park are on vacation, or it's summertime. There's a lot of things going on. Wouldn't you do this in the start of the new school year when families are home and people can really know about this? I mean, even finding this location was difficult. I didn't see a lot of advertisement for this at all.
Here's what I'd like you to do, and I've asked this quite a few times. Put together a list of questions that you want answered, and if you listen, here's why I'm saying
Here's
this.
the list from the Mount Tabor Neighborhood Association. We sent that to the city on July 1st, and you'll see the note on the top says that it hasn't been answered in any official on the record way. So you
This
could
letter,
start.
this is a letter to the mayor.
It's the mayor and to city council, but it's about water bureau decisions and water bureau policies. So I would like to have the water bureau use this as a starting point, and then people in this group could add additional questions on it. But starting tomorrow, you guys could get to work on answering the questions contained in that letter and give us an official written response. We would appreciate it.
We can get you give us questions, and we have your emails. We will send you those answers, and if you want to come and sit down in an auditorium and have us go over those questions.
That would be great. We would like that's what we want.
But right now, I can't
We would like it.
I can't
That's
speak
great.
for the commissioner. I can't speak for David. One thing I never do is I never speculate, and I never sit down and tell people we're going to meet at a certain time when I'm not certain, because I don't control people's calendars. In fact, my wife's upset at me right now because I'm here instead of on a camping trip with her. So.
I can appreciate
Believe
you
it,
not wanting to say that,
we
but
are
if we
all
email
missing
you-
out
if
on
we-
we understand, the Water Bureau and me personally, like I said, I've been involved with this project since 2002, and when we
So have we.
started talking to the neighbors, the neighborhood association. What many of you don't know is that as many of you don't know, and I explained this morning to Donna, was that the neighborhood association was in favor of burial of the reservoirs and putting a water feature on top.
When I went to the
and
meeting in 2002, that was true.
No, in 2002.
I stood in an auditorium 9 months pregnant. My daughter was born October 2002.
Was Cascade Geller in that meeting?
Yes, she was.
Okay.
Yes, and I stood in that
Cascade-
meeting 9 months pregnant, and that's not what I recall.
No, that's what we sat down and told folks. They wanted to have a fence around. There was a recommendation to put a fence around the reservoir. Eric Steen met with the neighborhood association. The neighborhood association encouraged the Water Bureau to go to the solution, the final solution, which ultimately was going to happen because we knew down the road, and just like it's happened now, is that back in 1970, on December the 4th, 1970, in the Oregon Journal, you can look this article up, state and federal health officials had called on the city of Portland to cover its reservoirs. And I'm happy to send any of you who want that information, so that news article, because that project at that time was between $10 and $15 million at Mount Tabor. What I'm talking about, when we met with the neighborhood association leadership were in favor of that. When we went to that meeting, and I believe on September the 19th in 2003, that's when we heard from folks who said they did not want that project to move forward.
So
that
you're
there had
talking about
begun-
an MTNA meeting
Yes.
dated.
Not a meeting. It was we met with the board of the Mount Tabor Neighborhood Association. Eric Steen and Dennis Kessler were at that meeting.
this is about LT2 now. It's about a different requirement.
Now what we have is, instead of the state and federal government telling Portland that it was going to lose, I believe, some official sanctioning or something, that project didn't happen.
Right. So that had nothing to do with the neighborhood association. The project was canceled, correct?
Yeah, the project was canceled by the city council.
So
But the project was canceled by the city council in 1975.
So would you be the person that we could email tomorrow or the next day to start working towards setting up a meeting so we could get in touch with the people in an on-the-record public forum to answer the questions that people here tonight have been saying they're not able to answer?
What I'm saying to you is that I will propose to the commissioner and my boss, David Schaff, that this is what we heard tonight, is this is what you would like, and what I'm asking you, the folks, to do is, you've given me a list here, you've given me a letter that you sent to the mayor. I'm asking for a list of questions that the Water Bureau and the City Council, our commissioner, can answer. We did this years ago. Floyd Jones sent a list of 65 questions. We answered those questions for her, and we expected that those answers would have been posted, and they never were.
We're talking about no deaths from open reservoirs, and Tim Hall does not realize what's going on with that. Could you explain it? Scott Fernandez can tell me.
Yeah, why haven't you guys ever acknowledged the public health benefits of the open reservoirs? Ever?
Such
Such as venting radon gas and chloroform.
radon gas in the reservoirs. In fact, someone.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. There's
I
no
said
radon?
I'm saying that there's no danger from radon gas in the open underground reservoirs.
Radon gas from the list of cities that
Because we don't have any, and it's not something we're required to indicate for our water quality.
Why was it reported for so long and then taken off?
They were voluntarily putting it in there, but it was one of those things where we didn't have there was no negligible, there was no radon. I mean, we're not going to put something in a report when it's not there.
But you've got almost 400 pica curies coming out of the Columbia South Shore well field that is being mixed into the system when it's used and coming into the open reservoirs. In a closed reservoir, there's no place for it to efficiently escape. Would you agree with that or not disagree with that?
Scott, I'm not a microbiologist. I'm not one of our water quality people who can sit down there and speak to your questions.
Can they be at that meeting?
Huh?
Can they be at that
I'd be
meeting?
happy. The questions, if you can have Scott write his question down about this, we can answer it.
Okay, and also about the salmonella and the covered reservoirs, does the Bureau acknowledge that those deaths have occurred?
Yes.
Deaths from salmonella in Gideon, Missouri, or Alamosa, Colorado?
But we don't know. But you have to understand, we don't know what the situation related to those reservoirs were. Were they poorly kept?
But that's already
was it
documented by EPA. That's not something that's a subjective
I
interpretation.
know, but I'm
by
saying
me.
to you, Scott, we don't have, you've researched this and you've studied this, and but what I'm not hearing is, I'm not hearing the facts of those deaths. I'm not hearing why, based on the investigation that was conducted by the people, what were the actual cause?
Well, the cause was the birds. The cause was the birds were able to breach the barrier to the birds, which is exactly what we have in our covered reservoirs.
Well, you know what? At Mount Tabor, many of you get your water. If you live around Mount Tabor, you're getting most of you are getting your water from an underground reservoir. At the top of Mount Tabor is an underground reservoir.
Has the city ever had any potential?
That's just for the east side
No,
of
see,
Mount
that's
Tabor.
I'm
see,
saying-
but my point is,
my
point is that there's an underground reservoir at Mount Tabor. In Powell Butte, there's been an underground reservoir, a 50 million gallon reservoir since 1980. All around the city, the Portland Water Bureau has tanks and underground facilities that store water. These reservoirs have not killed anybody. There's been no radon. There's been none of these.
Because that water passes through the open reservoirs.
Have the
Those
open
reservoirs are the
killed
barrier.
anyone? Have the open reservoirs killed anyone? Have the open reservoirs killed anyone?
Except for the guy that fell in, that's only one.
Who's the guy who fell in?
Back in 2003, I believe, a man drowned inside the reservoir.
Well, people drown every day jumping off high cliffs and swimming in the Sandy River.
Has there ever been any documented health threat from the open reservoirs that's come to any kind of health, documented health problems?
Not that I'm aware of.
So,
But I'm not the health department. You'd have to contact the Oregon Health Department for that.
but certainly you've studied the health impacts of making the decisions to close versus open reservoirs.
I've not studied the health.
But the Portland Water Bureau has not studied the health impacts.
We
of
know
closed
that
versus
based on the fact that covered reservoirs are the standard around the country for storage of drinking water. That's what the Water Bureau is relying on. And
So you're doing it because everybody else is doing it, even though we have a distinctly different, distinctly cleaner watershed than a number of
there
other
are
places?
there are a number of cities in America that would dispute our claim about having the best water in the
Who
world.
would
New
that
York
be?
City and Rochester?
Who would that be? Who would be the number of cities that would
I don't
dispute
know.
the claim? Well, you're the one who made the claim.
No, I made the claim, and you know what? There's an article that you can go online and sit and type in best drinking water in America, and those cities will come up.
And are they scientific?
I understand.
Is
so.
there scientific?
Yeah, I understand.
I would like some scientific backup to these photos. The photos are, I believe, in my opinion, there are a lot of fear-mongering photos.
No, these are
But if
these
this posed a real health threat, then wouldn't it be showing up in your water testing? If any of these problems posed a real health threat, wouldn't you be seeing it in your water testing?
We're concerned. We do a lot of water testing daily, right?
Yeah.
When we had a boil water notice that affected the city, right?
That was based on hearsay.
No, it wasn't based on hearsay. We actually took samples at several stations. They came back positive, and the Water Bureau issued a boil
Was
water
this the one
notice.
where it was found next to a reservoir in Washington Park?
No,
It's
this
not
is the
from
one
water
this is
sample?
two reservoirs. This was at the Washington Park Reservoir, and
It was water from the
it
reservoir.
was water from the reservoir.
And what did they
Date
find?
of that?
We tested the water, and the test came back inconclusive in terms of the source
Unconclusive, the source of what?
of the contaminant.
What was the contaminant?
We don't know.
So
That's the thing.
essentially what you're saying is the boil
unconclusive
water.
contaminant that you don't know. That doesn't sound like there's any.
That's not possible to test for. They name the name of the lab that does the test.
We do the test. The test came back
The test
positive.
of water.
We tested.
For what?
We do testing. It came back positive for total coliform and E. coli. And this has all been in the news, and
Yes, I know.
you're more than welcome to get it. In 2000,
And it came
in
back
November,
inconclusive.
in November of 2009, the lab basically said that from the samples that they have, they could not determine what the cause was.
So meaning
No,
that the
they
first
could not
test.
determine that it was.
The cause.
But they could determine that-
But the sample did come from the
And they determined that there was E. coli.
yes.
On two tests.
Non-infection.
No,
Non-infection.
Non-infection.
but they
Yeah,
did.
just
They
like
did.
last year in Selwood, they had a detection of E. coli, and they said it would cost us thousands of dollars to get the public records request. But so, yes, in buried infrastructure, we had E. coli last year. Yes, just prior to Amanda Fritz scheduling a public meeting on alternatives to burying the reservoirs, then they had detects at Washington Park. And just as we had the hydrochloric acid in the buried tank up at Tabor last year, and that's not brought publicly. So yeah, there's no difference in public health risk between open and covered reservoirs. And, it's insignificant that they found non-infectious E. coli.
So why is that? Why are you putting out public information not distinguishing between infectious, which puts the health at risk, and non-infectious? Why is your testing method not distinguishing between something that actually is of harm to the public and something that poses no harm to the public?
Well, we have to depend on the lab to tell us what we're not having the strain, I guess, of E. coli.
But
And
your labs can test for that. And labs
Yeah.
can tell you whether it's infectious and dangerous to
Well,
humans.
I don't have any information about what
community
strain
college
what
labs will
strain
tell you
what strain of E. coli they found.
But
I do. All I know is that we had to by law we had to notify the residents that were affected on the west side of Portland twice in 2009 and 2012 about about E. coli that we had gotten from our test samples. On the third day of the event, we tested again downstream, and we found no E. coli.
if your testing method does not distinguish between infectious cryptosporidium, which puts the public's health at risk, and non-infectious cryptosporidium, which is of no risk to people's health, why would you as a public information officer be okay, and why would the Portland Water Bureau be okay with putting out a boil alert that terrifies everybody that they're at risk? Why wouldn't you choose the path of picking a testing method that distinguishes between a real risk and not? It almost feels like the fact that you've chosen that testing method.
We picked the tested method that is recommended by the Oregon Health, the Health Department.
The Oregon, who's recommending that testing?
My understanding is this is recommended by the health folks. I mean, and we're testing
When you say
the
the
water.
health folks, can you tell me who specifically that is? I'd like to do some information.
I think it's the Oregon Health Authority. But again, I hate to answer questions and speculate. So please understand, if I don't have an answer for you, I'm not going to give you a half-ass answer, and that's, you can use that language. You know, rather than say that you're asking me about infectious versus, you know, something that's not, and whether or not that you can even test for that, I don't know.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm the public. I can answer the questions I have information
I appreciate
for.
that.
But if I asked you to answer that question, could you?
I appreciate that. Well, it just lets me know that we need to put it on the list of questions for the meeting that we're going to schedule. So I appreciate that. Thank you.